Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
With ACC Wrestling Championships right around the corner, we have the chance to speak with Virginia Tech Wrestling head coach Tony Robie on episode 472 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. We're recording on Wednesday, February 25th, 2026 from the Tech Solutions Studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Today's episode is brought to you by Rich Web. I'm your host, Riley Klaus, and today I'm joined to my left by student intern and wrestling fanatic, Cody Wagner. Producing the show, as always, behind the scenes is Mr. Nick Brown, and today we're thankful to be joined by head coach of Virginia Tech Wrestling, Tony Robie. Coach, thanks for taking the time to stop in and get some updates on wrestling.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. It's great to be here. Exciting time of year if you're a wrestling fan, without a doubt. And excited to talk about some Hokies wrestling.
Yeah, and with that, it's our first chance to talk to you this season. How would you say the season's gone, and where's the team at going into this pivotal time?
I think up to this point, I mean, you know, I feel like we've had some pretty good moments. I think the biggest thing is we've improved throughout the course of the season, and that's really what our goal is, to do all the, you know, every single year. So I think if you look at where we were at now compared to where we were at, you know, at the beginning of the season when we opened up against Bucknell at home, I feel like we've had a lot of guys that have made a lot of progress and a lot of gains. You know, and we spent the first half of the year trying to figure out what our lineup was going to look like exactly. And you wrestle some young guys, you give some different guys some opportunities. Some guys get hurt. Some things just kind of figure themselves out in terms of the lineup. And you know, I think a lot of things kind of fell into place. You know, we were going to redshirt some guys, and there were injuries, or we decided to redshirt somebody else. So some other guys had some opportunities. So some young guys have really stepped up for us this year and have helped us get to where we're at. But, you know, we've got two huge events coming up with the ACC championships and the NCAA championships. So, you know, we're really focused on getting the guys ready and making sure we're prepared to do our best wrestling at the most important time of the year.
And what are sort of your hopes and aspirations along with expectations going into both ACCs and then nationals after that?
Yeah, I mean, we try not to put you know, tangible things on it. You know, really our goal is to go out and compete at the standard that we want to set for ourselves. And we want to represent Virginia Tech, and we want to represent our program in a way that's, you know, exciting for our fans to watch, and hold ourselves to a standard in how we compete, and the toughness that we wrestle with, the mindset that we wrestle with, you know, the offensive mindset, where we're going out and we're scoring points, and really just trying to focus on those things. So it's really just always a process of, you know, constant improvement all the time, from day to day, week to week, match to match. And so I think if we can just continue to do that, if we can, you know, stay healthy, and get healthy in a couple places, I think good things will happen. You know, certainly the ACC championships, is a great opportunity for us, especially us hosting at home. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. So, you know, that's a huge opportunity for us to create some excitement around the program and create some excitement for our fan base.
And then you mentioned a little bit about like unexpected wrestlers coming on strong later in the season. Mac Church amongst those, he had a big win against UNC along with Jaden Bullock. How about those guys coming on strong later in the season when maybe things have changed in the lineup? You had Ryan Burton in there, and then you ultimately decided to redshirt him, and now Church coming back into the lineup and looking good.
Yeah, I think those are two guys that have done a nice job for us down the home stretch. And, you know, probably had some events early in the season, some matches early in the season where maybe they didn't wrestle to the best of their ability. And a lot of credit goes to those guys for just being persistent and persevering and, you know, buying into, you know, the philosophy of what we're trying to get these guys to accomplish in terms of how they compete. And I think, both those guys are at their best when they're attacking. So, that's something we're constantly trying to improve upon is getting those guys to go out and be offensive and try to score points and score takedowns. And, I think, that's ultimately the style that's going to win wrestling matches in the postseason. So.
And when you look at this season, were there any matches that stood out in terms of there was strong progression, or maybe this is the identity of Virginia Tech wrestling?
Well, I was really proud of the effort at NC State. You go down there, and that's a tough place to wrestle. It's loud. Their fans are, they're tough. They're all over you. So I thought we did a great job staying poised. We talked about, composure in that match, and just, everybody doing their job, focusing on the wrestling, not getting caught up in some of the extracurricular stuff that can go on in those rivalry type matches, and, just trying to keep your emotions in check. And I thought we did a great job of that up and down the lineup, really. And when you start off, with Eddie, beating the defending national champion, then Aaron goes out and gets a technical fall, and then at 49, Colin Guy knocking off the number 4 or 5 ranked guy in the country. It kind of takes the crowd out of it. And so a credit to our little guys for going out there and doing that. And, I think that made it a little bit easier for our bigger guys. So that's one match where I thought we wrestled really well. I think we've been pretty consistent with our effort down this last home stretch of the season, and even against Oklahoma State in a loss, I felt like we wrestled well in a lot of places and wrestled well enough to win. Unfortunately, we needed to turn a couple of those close losses into close wins, and we could have had a different result as a team. But overall, really pleased with the progress that the guys have made over the course of the season.
Yeah, and how have you noticed, I guess, there's been a lot of talk, at least nationally, that, hey, Virginia Tech might have to take a step back this season. Caleb Henson's redshirting. But then you see the comparatives from last season. You look at NC State, or UNC, last year, the loss to UNC, and then a great dominant victory over them at home, and then the Oklahoma State match. You won 2 matches last year against them, now 4 this season. How have you seen the progression of this team this year?
Yeah, I think, if you talk to the guys on the team and even some of the older guys, their acknowledgement of what this freshman class has brought to the room this year. We've got an incredible freshman class, true freshman. Obviously, Aaron Siedell is doing some fantastic things, and Colin Guy, and you mentioned Ryan Burton and Drew Gorman and Ben Weeder. And Noah Neininger. So that class is really kind of special, and probably in my time here, the best class that we've ever brought in from a talent standpoint, but also just in terms of how they approach wrestling, the maturity level that they have for being young kids and their desire to be great. So I think those guys have kind of raised the bar a little bit, and I think helped us maybe exceed some people's expectations. I don't think we ever looked at this season as a year that it was going to be a down year. But obviously, you take Caleb out of the lineup and make a decision to redshirt him. That's something you have to, have some guys that can kind of make up for those points. And I think these young guys have helped us do that. So, up to this point, I feel pretty good about that part of it. And a lot of the credit goes to my coaching staff and really helping these guys continue to improve throughout the course of the season. There's a lot of work that's done behind the scenes, working with these guys individually at practice, watching video, game planning in terms of what they need to do to get better. It's really been a team effort this year, and it's been a lot of fun. This has probably been one of the more fun years that I've had as a coach.
Yeah, and you mentioned the decision for Caleb to redshirt. Was that purely his, or did you all play a role in that decision?
We discussed. Ultimately, the decision was going to be his. But we kind of talked about it. When we found out that Eddie was going to get another year, we just felt like looking into the future and looking into next season, we knew what this freshman class was about, and we felt like, those guys getting a year under their belts this year and then stepping into the lineup next year, in some cases, some of those guys are wrestling as true freshmen, but having Eddie back and essentially, Ethan Miller's the one guy that's contributing that we're going to lose. And then we get Caleb in there, and obviously we have Bo coming in, and felt strongly that, next year we had a chance to have a special team, and just kind of talked to Caleb about that. And I think, after he had a little bit of time to digest it and think about it, he was on board. But, at the end of the day, if he didn't want to do that, we would have wrestled him for sure. But he was on board. I think Caleb's goals and legacy at Virginia Tech go far beyond his personal goals. He's got goals for the team, and he wants to leave an impact and a mark on Virginia Tech with how we do as a team as well. And I think he saw things kind of coming together for next year as well. So it's been a great year for Caleb to just really focus on his freestyle wrestling skills. He had an opportunity to wrestle not too long ago in Croatia and had a fantastic tournament, beat a world champion, and then beat a U20 world champion as well. So he's got aspirations to make world and Olympic teams once he's done with his college career here at Virginia Tech and stick around here and train with us. So this year has really been a good year for him to get a little bit of a taste of that, sharpen up his freestyle wrestling skills. He'll obviously come back to folk style next year and then hit the ground running once he graduates.
Yeah, still got a lot more to ask you about this season and what that looks like going into nationals. But where are you thinking Bo and Caleb might end up next season, considering the logjam that you might have in those lower weight classes? Yeah,
that's something we're going to have to figure out for sure. Even with Aaron, there's a lot of we have a lot of great guys, and a lot of them are pretty close to being the same size. So we'll kind of see how things play out. Once this season's over, and once those guys get through the world team trials and hopefully make world teams, I think those guys have an opportunity and certainly a chance to make the world team and compete at the world championships. So, we're kind of focusing on that right now, but that's certainly something that's in the back of my mind and seeing how things play out. So, hopefully we can get that figured out.
Well, we want to ask you a little bit about the specific wrestlers going into ACCs and nationals. It seems like Eddie Ventresca, he is just fully leveled up and is wrestling at another level at the moment. What have you liked seeing from him?
Yeah, I think one thing for sure is that I think you're not seeing it in every match, but he's definitely scoring more points than he has in the past. And when he has an opportunity and he's capable of majoring or teching guys, he's going out and doing that. And that was definitely something that we wanted to emphasize with Eddie. After the Bucknell match, we just felt like he left a lot on the table. We felt like even at the NCAAs last year, he left a little bit on the table in some of the matches. And so, just trying to instill that mindset where you go out and you wrestle a style of wrestling that's exciting, you're scoring points, you're dominating. And I think what he's come to realize is when you take that approach, it's a little more work up front, but in the long run, it's a lot easier. And it's a lot more fun. And he's really had some success doing that. And we've seen that throughout the course of the season. And then he's won some close ones too. So Coach Tonelli has done a great job helping Eddie develop in all areas of his wrestling. But I think Eddie's, I just think from a focus standpoint, a maturity standpoint, he's really grown a lot. He's always had tremendous talent and tremendous athletic ability, but I think everything else has caught up to that. And, when you can put all the pieces of the puzzle together, you have a great chance of doing some incredible things. And I think Eddie's positioned himself well, to make a really realistic run at winning this year. And I think that's that's the only thing he would probably be satisfied with, and that's not what we're really focusing on. We're focusing on just wrestling to the best of our ability, competing hard, figuring out ways to win matches, and he's done that recently against Spratley and against Robinson, winning both those matches in overtime. But we got to continue to try to separate ourselves from those guys. And if you can go out and score a takedown, you put yourself in a much better position to win those matches. So I'm excited about Eddie. I think he's as dialed in as he's ever been. And he's just, he's on a mission.
Yeah, and then you got Aaron Siedell at 133, who it feels like you could just watch this kid wrestle all day. He is so fun and in a way reminds you of dudes like Bryce Andonian in the past, where it's just he's letting it fly, he's letting the offense go. And that one was a fun match against Jax Forrest. Of course, he fell just a little short. But what have you seen from Aaron, and what do you like from him going into ACC?
I mean, there's a lot to like about Aaron Siedell, without a doubt. We knew Aaron was special in high school, and when he committed to us, we knew he had a chance to be great. But he's really even jumped levels since he's gotten here, and he was always good on top for sure. But his ability to go out and wrestle some of the best kids in the country, and when he gets on top of them, the ability to go score back points, and really, he's really effective from every position in the sport of wrestling. He can go out, he can score takedowns, he applies a ton of pressure on his opponents. It's really tough to hold up against Aaron the entire match. And when you have the skill set that Aaron has, and then you have the mentality that he has, and he goes out and he's attacking the whole time, man, that's a tough style to face. And he just is overwhelming guys with pressure and in scoring points, and he gets on top of you, and he can score points in bunches. So it's exciting. We're obviously really excited about what Aaron has brought to the team, and what he's capable of doing down the stretch here. So yeah, I mean, he's just, he's the whole package. He eats, breathes, and sleeps wrestling. He works incredibly hard. He's incredibly dedicated to what it takes to be successful. He's got a great mindset. So Hokie fans are going to have a lot of fun watching Aaron for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and then at 149, Colin Guy, is there any health updates with him? How is he doing? And of course, he's a fantastic wrestler as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think he's probably one of the most improved guys on the team from the beginning of the year until now. His health is getting much better. He'll be wrestling at the ACC championships. He's back on the mat. So I think he's made... we were pretty conservative with the injury after UVA, and we wanted him to rest for, a pretty good period of time to try to get healthy, and he's getting there. So I think he'll be close to 100% by the time we get to March 8th, and excited to see him wrestle. He just presents a ton of problems. Like, he can win a lot of different ways. He's so hard to score on. He can score offensively on his feet. He can score defensively on his feet. He can, you can be on his leg, and then next he's, Winn-Dixieing you to your back, and he's up by 7. And he can ride, and he can turn, and he's good on bottom. So, that's a lot to deal with, so he just he's one of those guys that has an uncanny way of figuring out how to win matches, and he's been winning his whole life. So I think the biggest area where Colin has improved in from November until now is just the mentality and the mental side of things, and going out and believing that he's the best guy in the country now, and, going out and not giving guys too much respect. And I think early on in the year, he wrestled some good guys, and it took him till about halfway through the match to figure out that he was, as good or better than some of these guys. And I think through that process, he gained a lot of confidence. And, he was a lot more willing to go out and get after guys, and kind of take it to them instead of sitting back and waiting for things. And really, going out and attacking is the way we want all of our guys to wrestle.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that a couple of times, right? That attack mentality. How do you think that manifests itself in matches and just making sure you aren't getting the stalling calls, you're the one pushing the action?
I just think it's, it's a mindset. It's a way that you have to approach wrestling, and you approach practice. And I think you can, you play like you practice. And, if you're a guy that's not aggressive in practice and you're not trying to score points in practice, we're probably going to see the same thing in matches. So it's been a point of emphasis for us as a team and as a program to really try to beat that into our guys' heads this year. And I think a lot of these guys are doing a good job of buying into that kind of mentality, because really, it's really tough I call it backing into wins, when you don't do a lot and, you try to score one takedown, or, you get a lead early and you try to kind of slow the match down, or you go on clock management. You can win a match or two here and there doing that, but to do what you want to do at the NCAA championships and to win 5 matches and win an NCAA title, man, that's a tough way to do it. It's just, it doesn't happen very often. The guys that go out and they take risk and they're aggressive and they try to score points are typically the guys that have a lot of success when it comes to that event.
Now, one final guy to ask you about, Sonny Sasso. What development did you see in that big win against Oklahoma State from him?
Well, I think he's changed his style of wrestling a little bit. He's moving his feet a lot more. He's a lot more active. He's not standing around and letting guys pull on his head as much and staying in the hand fight. He's using his athleticism and his length to his advantage a lot more than maybe he was prior to that. So I think he's done a great job, probably the last 3 weekends, probably since the Stanford match, quite honestly, where he didn't perform well. So, credit to Sonny for identifying where he needs to improve at and implementing those changes. And, he's a different wrestler when he wrestles the style that's conducive to him, and to his skill set.
Yeah, and how about wrestling from behind? That feels especially important in nationals and ACCs where you're going to face good wrestlers. In some of the matches, you might get behind, and I think one of the best examples of it was when Caleb won the national championship. He gets behind to Gomez early and then able to really just do what he wanted offensively for the remainder of the match. How do you wrestle from those situations where you're behind in the match?
Well, I think that you really don't worry about what the score is. You should really be implementing your style and your pace and putting pressure on your opponent, regardless of how much time's left in the match, regardless of what the score is, right? Like the way that you compete really shouldn't change. And a match is 7 minutes long. So if you give up a takedown early, it's really not a big deal, and I think guys that go out and they take risk and they're aggressive, they can overcome that really easily.
And then I want to ask you a little bit about this coaching staff. Jared Freyer seems like a huge resource, and the rest of that staff as well. Just talk a little bit about those guys.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that I have guys that are very, very capable. Certainly in the wrestling room, and are capable of helping these guys get better, are capable of running practices and teaching technique and implementing the philosophy that we want to, implement with our guys. So Coach Freyer has been, with me since I got hired as the head coach. And, we know each other well. We trust each other philosophically. We're typically on the same page with things. So, to have somebody in there that's, can relay the same things to the guys that you're relaying. And technically he's great, especially in certain positions. So he's been a tremendous asset for us, helping guys develop in the middle of our lineup, guys like Caleb, guys like Bryce, guys like Colin Guy. Without a doubt. And then Zach Tonelli's been a great addition, came in from Columbia as the head coach a couple years ago. Technically, Zach's, he's a fantastic coach, especially in that aspect. He's really good at teaching wrestling. He's really good at working one-on-one with guys. He really understands the sport of wrestling at a high level. So, he deserves a lot of credit, especially for Eddie and Eddie's development over the course of the last year and a half or so, and kind of getting him to where he's in a position where, Eddie was always good for sure, but he's jumped levels. Zach's a big part of that and has helped him a ton, and a lot of other guys as well. So, having those two guys, having Coach Hott, and then having Sam Latona and Bryce in the room this year is important. And the one thing that I've learned, is that the more high caliber wrestlers that we have in our room that are postgraduates that are in there helping guys on a daily basis, man, that goes a long way. So we've got to continue to grow our staff and continue to bring in athletes that are here, maybe they're resident athletes, they're training to make Olympic teams or world teams, but they're training alongside of our guys. And we've been fortunate. Jordan Oliver has been in town, is training with us on a part-time basis. For those that don't know Jordan Oliver, he's one of the best college wrestlers of all time. He's a 2-time NCAA champion at Oklahoma State. Just fantastic mind to have in our room, and is really helping a lot of those guys as well. So that's something that we need to continue to develop with our program. It's something that we were probably lacking for a few years. So for me, it's great because my role has certainly changed. When you become the head coach in this day and age with all that's involved with college athletics, I don't spend nearly as much time in the wrestling room coaching wrestling as I do, out recruiting and fundraising and doing, donor relations and promoting the program. So that's a big part of our success, and those guys deserve all the credit for the development of our guys in the wrestling area.
This episode of the Tech Sideline podcast is brought to you by Rich Web, your local provider of top-tier IT managed services. For 30 years, Rich Web has offered a comprehensive suite of cutting-edge solutions tailored to empower businesses of all sizes in today's digital age. From top-tier network engineering services, ensuring seamless connectivity and security, to our exceptional managed endpoint and cloud services, providing proactive maintenance and strategic optimization, we're dedicated to delivering excellence at every turn. Rich Web, driving enterprise IT. Visit richweb.com to learn more. Rich Web has proudly hosted TechSideline.com for over 2 decades.
And Coach, you mentioned at the beginning ACCs get to be here in Blacksburg this year, but how can a supportive fan base help you out at this time and throughout the whole season?
Well, yeah, it's important, and I think one of the things that's helped our program develop is the fact that we really have grown our fan base, and no high caliber wrestler wants to go to a place where they get 1,000 fans at every match. So for us, when we have Oklahoma State here and we have 6,000 plus fans in the stands, and when we have Missouri coming to town, or Ohio State or NC State or whoever it might be, having that environment is like crucial. Not only for our athletes and the environment that we create, and Castle's a tough place to wrestle. Everybody knows how loud it gets in there, and we've got rowdy fans. So it's been a big part of our program going from where it was to where it is now. And our fan base has steadily increased over the course of the years. We've been fortunate that we've had some sustained success, and everybody wants to support teams that win. I think the ACC network and has helped elevate the whole profile of the sport of wrestling. There's so many people now. I spoke at an event in Northern Virginia yesterday, and there's so many people that have become wrestling fans just by watching it. They're Hokie fans, and we'll be wrestling on the ACC network. They watch it and they start to watch it, and then they start to become fans, and then they come to matches. So it's a big part of what we do. And then having a big donor base is really, really important in this day and age for a lot of reasons. I mean, resources move the needle, and money moves the needle for college athletics. So we've been fortunate that, I've been here for 20 years, and we've got a lot of really loyal supporters and donors that love wrestling, and wrestling people in general are pretty passionate about the sport. So they're willing to support us at a high level, but that's something that we're always looking to do, is to promote the program, to welcome people into our program and make them feel a part of it. And then, try hopefully steward those people in a way that they feel like, what we're doing is a worthwhile cause for them to contribute to and to donate to, and to give some of their hard-earned money towards wrestling. And we've been pretty successful with that. I think when people, they get to know us and they get to see what we're about, it's an easy thing to support.
Talking about this 2026 class that is coming in for next season, particularly about Bo Bassett, have you been able to identify what makes him so special and has given him the success that he's had at the high school level?
Well, I think when you talk to Bo, you can just see that he's his attitude and his mentality and the way that he looks at the perspective that he looks at everything in life comes from an incredibly positive lens. And I think he views everything as an opportunity, everything as a blessing, whether it's a perceived good thing or a bad thing. He has a great way of looking at things. And he's a very uplifting kid, man. Like if you're around him, he uplifts everybody around him. And he brings positive energy to everything that he does. He's really, really strong in his faith, which I think has helped him kind of create that positive energy and that positive attitude. And if you ever saw the kid work, you'd understand why he's as good as he is. His work ethic is incredible. And we talked about it, you play like you practice. That guy practices really, really hard all the time, and that's been ingrained in him since he was a kid through his dad and through his family. So it's pretty special. And there's been very few kids that I've seen that have the ability to show up with a smile on their face every day like that kid does and work like he does, and he's excited about getting better and he's willing to learn from everybody, and it's infectious.
Yeah, and then could you provide some information about Noah Neininger, some of the guys you already have in the room that redshirted this season and are ready to go for next year, and then some of those other freshmen that are coming in?
Yeah, so currently we're redshirting Drew Gorman, who's seen, it's great now because they have 5 dates to compete and before burning the red shirt. And that's, in my opinion, that's been a great rule change because it allows you, if you have somebody hurt, to throw a quality red shirt in there. In the past, you wouldn't be able to do that. It gives these guys an opportunity to compete. So Drew has done a nice job for us. Started off at 41, and then when Colin got injured, he stepped in at 49 and did a nice job at 49 for us as well. But he's going to be a factor in our lineup for sure. What weight class? He's kind of in that 41, 49 range. So we're still figuring that part of it out. But him and you mentioned Noah. Noah had a great beginning of the season and was wrestling really well. And he ended up getting hurt at the Midlands. Was out for about 6 weeks, so kind of made that decision pretty easy to redshirt him and wrestle Colin. So Noah's, I think he's going to end up getting bigger. What weight he ends up at, I'm not sure. I would see him at 57, potentially even 65 down the road. But Noah's made huge jumps. Noah's from just up the road, Stanton River, Virginia, is a kid that I've known for a long, long time. He used to come, he'd stay at my house when he was a little kid, was friends with my sons and trained with them, and they would go up there. So I've watched Noah since he's been a little guy. So he's been fun to have in the room. He's a quiet guy, but he's really starting to open up. I think he feels really comfortable. And he's made big gains. He's made really, really big gains. Just incredibly strong, loves wrestling. He's just ate up. Everything he does is with the intention of getting better at wrestling, So, every part of his life. So when you have that mentality and you have the kind of talent he has, you have an opportunity to be great. Ryan Burton, who wrestled quite a bit for us earlier in the year and saw a little bit of time. Recently we decided we were kind of on the fence whether we were going to redshirt Ryan or we going to wrestle Ryan. And we ultimately made the decision that it was in his best interest to redshirt this year. Just get a little bit more experience and seasoning under his belt. I think there's a chance Ryan will be a 74 pounder at some point. He's a guy that won everything in high school, tremendous talent. is a lot of fun to watch in practice. You know, him and Bryce wrestle a lot. He reminds me a little bit of Bryce. He can just do some things that you can't teach. So, and then Ben Weeder's another one that, you know, we really doesn't get talked about a lot. Ben just recently, he had surgery actually today or yesterday. I think it was today. So he had elbow surgery, so he's going to be on the shelf for a little while. But he's a guy we're excited about. You know, Ben's got he works really hard. He's just tough. He embodies a lot of what our program is all about. So he's a name that people are going to want to remember.
And you've alluded to the fact that college sports has changed as a whole. And so from your wrestling perspective, how is it now trying to navigate the transfer portal and recruiting guys and maintaining who you have on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's absolutely different. You know, I think we've been fortunate that the majority of our guys like being here, and I think they like being a part of our program, and they feel like this is a place they can accomplish their goals, and they're happy. You know, so we haven't lost a lot of guys to the transfer portal. We've been able to go in and address needs in the transfer portal and pull some guys like Ethan Miller and Jaden Bullock and Sergio Desiante, you know, in guys like Connor McGonigal last year, who's an All-American for us. So, and that way it's been good. You know, when you do have a need, you can address it with somebody who's a little bit more experienced, because a lot of these high school kids are, you know, they're committing when they're juniors in high school. So, you know, if something comes up or a guy doesn't end up the weight class you think he's going to be, or somebody does transfer, it's easy. It's a lot easier to address those needs with the transfer portal. You know, we do like recruiting high school kids still. I think it's kind of where we'll continue to, you know, do 75% of our recruiting through the traditional kind of recruiting avenues and recruit high school kids and their families. I just think Virginia Tech is appealing to those kids maybe a little bit more than it is for transfers. The transfer scene is a little bit transactional, and I think high school kids are, you know, they're looking for somewhere they can call home, that they're going to be happy at for, you know, their college career.
Yeah. So when you first got to Virginia Tech, the program was in a very different spot. How were you able to assist Coach Dresser and really help rebuild this program?
Well, I think we just worked really hard. You know, I think there was potential here for sure. And, you know, me and Kevin were like-minded in that way. And Kevin was a really hard worker too. So it took us a little bit of time to kind of get things rolling. It took, you know, a good 4 or 5 years to get to a level where we could attract better kids. And, you know, I've always said when you just stack a lot of great days on top of each other for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, and that's just kind of your philosophy and how you approach life, good things are going to happen for you. And sometimes it may take a little bit of time, but, you know, that's kind of what we did. You know, we were confident in our philosophy on what it took to be good in the sport of wrestling, and the work and the toughness and the mentality that it required, you know, and the discipline and the work, you know, as much as anything. And so, you know, we just implemented that, and we held guys to that standard. We created that kind of expectation, and, you know, we were able to develop a great culture. And, you know, I think it just, you know, at some point, I'm not exactly sure when it was, it kind of transitioned over, and then it builds upon itself, and it gets a heck of a lot easier, you know, once you get that ball rolling. And once we got the ball rolling, and we were able to get some kids that kind of elevated the program. A kid named Peter Yates out of Georgia was a couple-time All-American for us, that committed to us early on. And then we got Devin Carter, who really elevated the program, and you know, was the first NCAA finalist for Virginia Tech. And you know, those you get guys that change the program. And then Makai Lewis comes along, and then Caleb comes along, and you know, it's kind of a snowball effect.
Yeah, and what lessons did you learn being with Coach Dresser for a decade and being the associate head coach at Virginia Tech for so long?
You know, I think one of the things, and that Kevin was, you know, he's a really outside the box thinker. You know, he was really creative in things outside of the wrestling room. You know, and he understood the importance of developing a fan base and developing a donor base, and he was skilled in those areas. So I saw the importance that he placed upon that. And I saw how it was positively affecting our program. So, I would say going from an assistant coach to a head coach, that's something that, a lot of people don't realize. There's a lot of head coaches that think their job's just about coaching wrestling. And, that may be the case, but you better be at a place where you have all the other pieces of the puzzle in place for you. That they already have a huge fan base. They already have a huge donor base. They already have incredible resources. We didn't have that. So we had to take a little bit different approach. And, I would say that was probably one of the best things that I was able to take from Kevin.
And when you mentioned guys like Makai and Caleb coming in and changing everything, it was fun watching the last time you were on this podcast, alluding to what Caleb could eventually do. And so you've seen so many top tier talents go in there. Are there any traits you're really looking for when you're recruiting that really stand out as guys that could really compete?
Yeah, I think, guys are just really competitive. I think is, if you look at what the commonalities between those guys, the Devin Carters and the Makais and the Calebs, is they had their competitive spirit is at a really high level, and they're just, they're not willing to quit. And, that is a big deal, and a lot of things in sports and especially wrestling, come down to just one man's will against another, and a lot of times we want to make it more than it is. And I'm not downplaying the other aspects of our sport. I'm not downplaying the technical side of things. I'm not downplaying the physical ability that you have to have, because all of those things are important for sure. But I think what the ultimate equalizer is the guy that, is just, there's no quitting him. And when you have no quit in you ever, you got a good chance, and that's, guys feel that in our sport when you wrestle them. And, that goes a long ways. And I think that's what really is made a lot of those guys special and makes some of the guys that we have in our program right now special.
And is that something that you think is innate? Kids come in with that, or is it something that you can help train?
I think you can improve upon it for sure. I do think a certain degree of it is like you have that in you, but I've seen it where kids have gotten a lot better with it, and so I do certainly think it can be a learned skill and you can get better at it. But some guys just kind of have it, Caleb Henson just, you could just tell he was a dog when he got here. And I remember the first time I put my hands on him and kind of rolled around with him, I was like, oh, we got something special here. It's something that you can't really see, but when you put your hands on him, you can feel it. And you could feel it when you with Caleb, you could feel it with Makai, you could feel it with Devin Carter. I'm told you can feel it with Aaron Siedell. I'm too old and too big, I guess. I don't know, more old than big, but anyways, yeah. So I that's an important part of it.
And what was that step for Caleb, do you think, from being really elite, takes fifth at Nationals freshman year, to winning a national championship? Did you see a step, or was it just putting in training every day, putting in the hard work?
Yeah, I just, I think experience is a big deal, I think Caleb maybe his freshman year at the NCAAs got himself a little bit too excited. I think controlling his emotions his second year and going through the NCAA tournament once and feeling it, you're a lot better the second time going through, because there's a lot of nerves, there's a lot of anxiety. You put, some guys put pressure on themselves. I think Caleb really mastered that after his first year. I know, the match that he lost on the front side his freshman year, I definitely think that he had himself too amped up for that match, and he needed to dial things back a little bit. And I think he learned from that experience, quite honestly. And that, and then you stack another 365 days of work on top of it. And you get a lot better by doing that.
Yeah, I know that peaking at the right time seems like a big conversation around this time of year in wrestling. How do you do that, and how do you get these guys ready for this time of the season?
Well, I think, the bulk of the work is mostly done at this point. I mean, you may make some incremental gains, and we definitely this year or this week have taken this as a a week where we're elevating our training a little bit in an effort to maybe make some small gains in some areas. But, it's really about fine tuning at this point in the season, fine tuning, the technical side of things, feeling really, really good, eliminating some of your weaknesses, and just building confidence as much as anything. And I think the mental side of things is critically important. And I think some guys at this point in the year, depending on how you conduct your program, they want the season to be over. And if you want the season to be over and you're thinking about, going on spring break or the weather getting nice and going to the Berg, right, in downtown Blacksburg, you're probably not going to have a good end of the year. Okay. So, we want to, we do make it fun for our guys too. So I think they enjoy coming in every day and they enjoy being a part of it and they enjoy the hard work. And competition is just the reward, from everything else that you're doing. It's your opportunity to go out there and show the world, kind of what you've been doing. And so that's kind of how we approach it. I think we do a pretty good job not putting too much pressure on ourselves either. I think some guys that just have a hard time with the pressure side of things. And, that's not good either.
And then a more general philosophy for you as a coach, how do you handle weight cutting and getting these guys in the right weight classes, trying to fit them in the lineup? How exactly do you approach that side of the sport?
We're fortunate. Our sports dietitian is a guy named Clint Wattenberg, who's really highly respected and probably the best in that field in the country, quite honestly. And we're lucky to have him at Virginia Tech. He oversees the sports nutrition program at Virginia Tech, but he also was a two-time NCAA All-American wrestler at Cornell. So he loves wrestling. He was at the UFC, was involved in their sports performance program for 6 years. So from a knowledge standpoint and an education standpoint, Clint has helped our guys a lot, the guys that are losing a little bit more weight and really be developing a system throughout the course of the year to help them, get that thing dialed in and make it as effortless as possible to do that. And so he's a huge resource for us in our program. As far as, fitting everybody in and figuring that side out of it, a lot of times it kind of takes care of itself. And this year it kind of took, we were in a redshirt Aaron and a lot of people thought I was crazy for doing that. But we've just felt like Dylan Campbell was very capable at 133 and Dylan ended up getting hurt and, we pulled Aaron's red shirt and he's going to step in and, where it goes in the future, it's hard to say, but those are good problems to have.
Yeah. And then how as a coach do you manage different wrestling styles, especially you mentioned you want some of those more defensive guys that aren't putting out as much output to maybe pull it back a little bit. How do you handle guys that are more on the other end, the Aaron Siedell types, the even more extreme Bryce Andonian, where it's just they're trying to throw offense all the time? Do you try to pull that back or do you say, no, do your thing?
Well, I mean, obviously you have to be smart with the risk that you take, but you can't change guys. And I used to say this with Bryce a lot. I can't love it when Bryce does something crazy and throws somebody their back and then hate it when it doesn't work because that's just the way he is. And that's who he was as a wrestler. And, I want these guys to be themselves and wrestle the style that they're capable of wrestling to the skill set that they have. So, we like that. I do think, there are instances where, if it's costing you and you're doing things that, aren't effective out there. I think Jimmy, sometimes we've got to pull Jimmy back a little bit. Sometimes he does some things that get him in trouble a little bit. But, ultimately having that kind of style and being aggressive is you're going to end up, you can get better doing that. And when you don't like to take risk and you're looking to score one takedown a match, it's tough to improve. And I think that's what we've seen over the years with our guys that can go out there and be aggressive and score points and attack. Ultimately, may it cost them at some point during the season? Sure. But do they improve and get better through the course of their career? I think they do.
And have you seen an impact over the last few years as wrestling begins to grow with your facilities or the training center and all the resources you can have that can help you as a team?
Yeah, the resources are important. It's important that people understand how important the resources are. There was Penn State just released their revenue share dollars, and Penn State Wrestling's getting $1.45 million in rev share, from their athletic department. So, that's a big mountain to climb. So the fundraising is a huge part of it. The resources are a huge part of it. Being able to retain great coaches is a big part of it. The Southeast Regional Training Center is a tremendously important vehicle for the success of Virginia Tech wrestling. And anybody that's interested in supporting wrestling or supporting our cause or supporting our guys, I encourage them to contact me, and I can direct you on what the best ways to do that are. But we are fortunate. We did go from 9.9 scholarships to 15 scholarships last year. So, that increase alone helps a lot with getting more guys, getting some depth. And the more good guys you can have in your program, the more good resident athletes you can have around your program. Man, that's critically important to having success. And if you look at the model that some of the tops, the schools that are, ahead of us a little bit right now, that they've implemented, that's really what it looks like.
Yeah, so Coach, we got a couple of fun questions before you get out of here. So do you have an all-time U.S. college wrestling Mount Rushmore that you could give us? Top 4 wrestlers in folk style in the United States.
How about I give you Virginia Tech's?
Oh,
all right, I don't like giving other guys too much credit. Obviously Caleb, right? Mackay, Devin Carter, I think for sure.
Who's that for?
Yeah, the fourth is there's a lot of guys that could be fourth, right? I think you probably have to go with Jared Hott. Was NCAA finalist and 3-time All-American. Nick Braccetta's got an argument. Nick was a 3-time All-American, placed, I think, 7th, 4th, and 3rd in some really good weight classes. That fourth spot there's 4, right? Mount Rushmore.
Yes.
Yes. I think that 4th spot it's kind of up for grabs a little bit, but I'll go Jared Hott.
And to go one step further with that, are there any guys under the radar that over the years you've either witnessed or had the chance to work with that have been fun to be around?
Oh, tons of guys, Cody Howard, the Junkyard Dog, is one of my all-time favorites. We had a kid named Chris Penny, probably a decade or so ago that came through the program, and he was a fun guy to work with most of the time. He ended up All-American his last year, took 6th in the country, made it to the semifinals, and he got hurt, and was close to getting in the finals, but he finished his career with a 59-60 overall career record, and just kind of figured things out at the end of his career and was an All-American, but he worked like an animal. And so those kind of things are really cool and really fun. And the relationship side of things for me is, that's an awesome part of what I do, and being here so long. There's just so many guys over the years that impacted our program. We had a kid named Jesse Dong, who was early on was really good, never All-American, but he was really good. A guy that had beaten, guys that won NCAA titles, and was somebody that elevated our program as well. So probably too many for me to talk about.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us today. And is there any last message to the fans who want to help support you down the stretch this season?
Well, number one, come on out on March 8th, Sunday, March 8th. We're hosting the ACC Championship, so we need as many people in Castle as possible. We want to break the attendance record for the ACC Championships. I think currently NC State might hold that. So I think, we got to get everybody on board. We got to get everybody in Castle. If you're a casual wrestling fan, you probably just want to come for the semifinals and the finals. If you're a diehard, you can stay all day, but it's a long day. It's a long event. So hopefully we have great attendance for that. We're going to need as many people on our side as possible. It's going to be a great event. There's a lot of parity. There's probably 4 teams that can win that thing. We're certainly capable of doing that, and we're excited about the challenge. And, we just hopefully, if you like what we're doing here at Virginia Tech Wrestling and you want to get on board, man, we want to get as many people on board as possible. I encourage people to come out and watch a wrestling match. I think if you come out once, even if you don't understand it, I think you'll start to develop a passion for it, and you'll like it. I've had so many people over the years that have come once and they tell me how much they enjoy it, and they start coming and next thing you know, they're going to the NCAA championships and they're diehards. So wrestling's a pretty cool sport once you figure it out.
Well, we'll hope that Castle Coliseum is packed for you upcoming soon. And thank you, the viewers, for watching episode 472 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and refer the show to a friend if you haven't already. For Cody Wagner, Nick Brown behind the scenes, and Virginia Tech Wrestling head coach Tony Robie, I'm Riley Klaus saying so long for now.